I'm going to show you the inside of a supermarket in Tibet, but it's not the supermarket that matters. It's the fact that everything inside it is shaking. The interior is rattling apart, and everybody's running for cover. That's the inside view of an earthquake that just hit. But now look at the outside view. Roads cleaved apart, homes reduced to piles of rock. At least 100 dead due to this 7.1 magnitude quake. According to Chinese state media, Xi Jinping has called for an all-out search and rescue response. But Tibet is a hell of a place to rescue. It's one of the most punishing places on Earth, home to the highest peak on the planet, geologically unstable, cold, hard to reach. There is nothing easy about this rescue mission.
If you look at a lot of different earthquakes in this region, the buildings are usually made of brick. When you have the shaking from the seismicity, they're more easily to collapse, and that just causes much more devastation. The sooner that people can reach people who could be stuck or under rubble, the better a chance of survival.
Tibet is prone to earthquakes, and if you've ever wondered why, you might first ask a different question. How did all those Himalayan mountains there form in the first place? Well, that region is what you get when India and Asia collide. Because millions of years ago, the Indian tectonic plate actually used to be part of a different continent. Over the course of many lifetimes, it drifted north. And when it hit the Eurasian plate, that collision created this upswell of Earth, literally creating mountains in real time. And what we now know as Tibet lies on this major geological fault line, where those plates are still rubbing together. That creates earthquakes, and believe it or not, is still causing some of those world's highest mountain peaks, including Mount Everest itself, to grow even higher still.
So Mount Everest is said to rise a couple of millimeters each year due to the pressure that builds up between earthquakes. And it builds up year after year after year until after a few hundred years, we have huge earthquakes that cause loss of life.
The epicenter of this earthquake was about 100 kilometers from Mount Everest. That rattled base camp, forcing many people to evacuate. But according to Chinese state TV, there are also a handful of communities within just 5 kilometers of the epicenter. And only about 20 kilometers away is the major city of Gyaltsen, which is considered one of the holiest cities in Tibet.
These are remote communities. They are very high, so they're about 4,000 kilometers high.
According to Chinese state media, within a 200-kilometer radius of this epicenter, there have been 29 other earthquakes of at least a magnitude 3 in just the last 5 years. But the one that just happened was the most powerful. This geology of Tibet does make life more difficult. Tibet is often called the roof of the world because of how high it is. The average altitude in the area around the epicenter of the earthquake, around 4,200 meters, or nearly 14,000 feet above sea level. That creates two problems. One is in how rugged and mountainous and remote the area is.
One of the things that's really logistically challenging is earthquakes on this order and this magnitude tend to generate not just destruction from crumbling buildings, but also landslides that can block roads.
In many places on Earth, when there's an earthquake, you see cranes, excavators, bulldozers cleaning up. What we're seeing in the affected parts of Tibet are rescuers often digging by hand. Now, the buildings are smaller there, yes, but it goes without saying, supplying a relief operation in a remote region is a logistical challenge. And another thing that has to have been a consideration is that this is all happening in a part of the world where just breathing is hard.
When you're at this elevation, what they say in Tibet is everyone moves slowly because oxygen is so thin and so rare.
When Tibet was hit by a major earthquake in 2010, thousands of rescue workers were dispatched to help. But they came mainly from low-lying areas and then had to ascend to the disaster zone. Well, researchers in Beijing wanted to study them, and the results were immediate. Of 78 people measured, most experienced chest tightness. Nearly half headaches and dizziness. Nausea and insomnia were less common, but sudden vomiting was the most common symptom in those who were evacuated early. That was a big problem. In all, more than a third of the team was diagnosed with acute mountain sickness. About 1 in 5 team members was evacuated early because of it. And a big chunk, more than a third of those early evacuations, happened right away, just a day after arriving on the scene. Now, the key with this rescue is going to be China's ability to rely on those who are already acclimatized to the altitude.
There is a large military presence in Tibet, in the Chinese province of Xizang, and I think that there are plenty of rescuers on hand who are already acclimatized to the altitude.
But every earthquake poses its own set of challenges.
The images coming out of the remote area do show some extensive damage. Piles of rubble and broken bricks all across roads as storefronts just collapsed.
In this latest quake, according to Chinese media, some 1,500 rescue workers have been deployed, including hundreds of soldiers. Some 22,000 items of disaster relief are also on the way, things like tents and quilts, for example. And the Chinese Air Force, too, has reportedly joined the effort. But searching for survivors in sub-zero temperatures at high altitude in a remote, rugged region, that is the definition of a battle against the odds.